Coming to you from the Windy City. Welcome to Let's Talk Shop, a podcast about all things cloud and enterprise tech. Listen to insights and guest interviews with IT thought leaders and professionals. Now, here's your host, Elias Khnaser.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Shop. My guest today is Chris Sherwood of Crosstalk Solutions. Chris, it's super great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elias. Appreciate it.
So for those of you that don't know, I have been following Chris's YouTube channel, Crosstalk Solutions. I have all the information, all of his contact information down below for a few years now. So Chris has been awesome around all sorts of information. Like I've learned a ton about Ubiquity, a ton about FreePBX and VoIP, and we'll get into all of that and some of the stuff I've done because of Chris. But you've been an inspiration around some of these things. So first, I want to start by saying thank you for all the content you create.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
As someone who's been doing content creation for over 10 years, I can appreciate the effort that goes into all of these demos and preparing them and recording them. It looks easy on screen, but
it's a lot more work than people realize, for sure.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let's start with Crosstalk Solutions. So I mentioned that there's a YouTube channel, but there's also a company behind Crosstalk. So maybe tell us a little bit about Crosstalk.
Yeah, absolutely. So by and large, we do network and voice over IP consulting, right? So I found that, Crosstalk was started basically out of desperation. I was working as a director of installations for a voice over IP phone company where, I was managing, something like 300-400 phone system installations on a monthly basis. And they were running in the red. They tightened the belt. And me being a guy that was working remote for them, they laid me off, right? And so I was out there and just like, well, what do I do now, right? So I just started, going door to door around my local neighborhood. Hey, do you need help with this? Do you need help with that? Computer networking, websites, I'll do whatever you need, And in my free time, I ultimately just started recording tutorial videos about voice over IP on YouTube, and those started taking off. And then I started getting into some of the computer networking stuff, Ubiquity and whatnot. And ultimately, this sort of spare time hobby of mine of putting these videos on YouTube turned into the main lead generation driver for the business. Because people would watch the videos on YouTube and then they would say, hey, this guy looks like he kind of knows what he's talking about. Let's hire him to fix our stuff, right? Or install our phone system, whatever the case may be. Which is a double-edged sword because focusing on content on YouTube takes a lot of time and effort.
Yes, it does.
And running a business takes a lot of time and effort. So you kind of have these two buckets where the more time and effort I put into YouTube content, the more leads come into the company, but the more leads that come into the company, the less time I have for YouTube content, right? So it's been quite a growing process over the past 8 years or so, getting to the point where it is today, where we have, a business with multiple employees and multiple subcontractors, and just trying to maintain that balance. And while also now having to keep other employees' families fed. So it's been an interesting growth experience and learning experience for sure.
And of course, all of the leads that come in want you to do the installation, the preparation, and everything, right?
Yeah, we do. We have, and not only that, but when you have a presence on YouTube, it's a wonderful thing because everyone feels like they already know you. So in terms of sales, in terms of leads, it's great because by the time someone is coming to Crosstalk to say, hey, I'm interested in a phone system, mostly they're already ready to purchase. But they know me and I don't know them, right? And so it's sort of this weird, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like you wanna be able to help everyone that you possibly can. But you have to be able to sort out who is coming to Crosstalk to, purchase goods or services from the business, and who is coming to just say hi or try to get some free assistance with whatever particular issue they might be having with their, voice over IP phone system or their computer network, right? So sifting through those is also kind of its own unique challenge, I would say.
Time consuming too, right? I can imagine.
Yes, for sure.
So for all of my students that are watching this or they're listening to this, one of the main questions that I always get is, how do I get started? And although I've answered this question a million times, I loved your answer just now. So first of all, out of desperation, you went door to door, you started in your neighborhood. So my message to you, if you're listening to this, is, you see how Chris did it? Out of desperation, he went door, he found a way.
Yeah.
So engaging in your local community is instrumental. It's going to be the first step. It's going to help you gain that experience. So whether you're helping your church or synagogue or mosque or wherever you can do to help yourself get started, build your network, build your connections, definitely go down that path.
Yeah. And what I kind of tell people is, if you're getting started, especially if you're just looking to start your own side business as an IT consultant, cast a really wide net at first, right? Whatever services you think you can provide those services. You know, I was doing websites for people, and I am not a website designer, but I can certainly fumble my way through setting up a WordPress site and putting in the information and making this picture go there and that sort of stuff, right? So I cast a really wide net at first. I did all sorts of different services. And then as I had more and more business coming in, I was able to narrow down the scope of what I worked on to just the stuff that I was most specialized in.
Yeah. And Chris, you also offer training, correct? For FreePBX, if I'm not mistaken. This is on-site instructor-led training, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So not only FreePBX, we have now started doing what we call Crosstalk's Fundamentals of Networking as well. So we have about every 6 months or so, we do a FreePBX based training. It's a 4-day training course with myself and the CEO of a company called Clearly IP. I mean, listen, the whole Clearly IP and FreePBX thing, that's almost its entire own podcast talking about all of that. It's really an interesting story. I followed the drama. but Tony is the most knowledgeable guy in voice over IP that I'm aware of, and certainly that I am business friends with. So we do this training where he and I just basically take turns instructing a class for 4 days on everything you need to know about voice over IP and FreePBX in general. And then the networking class is more specific to, it's for someone who has a good working knowledge of networking, but wants to take their skills to the next level with, high availability setups and sort of the more advanced routing techniques and things of that nature, where I will fully admit that I am definitely the second string trainer in that class. We have one of my guys, a guy by the name of Dave Barger, who is an absolute wizard at computer networking. He primarily teaches the course, and I'm just there to help out where I can.
That's cool. So how much is the course for those that are interested? I'll put links to how they can get to the page around that, but how much is the course?
Yeah, so the FreePBX course, it depends on if you are purchasing the equipment to take home with you or not. And I'm going to have to look it up. It's events.clearlyip.com. I think it is $16.95 for 4 days without the equipment, and $22.95 with the equipment. The equipment being a phone system server and one of each of the 3 models of phones that Clearly IP provides. So it's actually a pretty decent, $700 for 3 phones and a server.
That's actually a pretty good deal. I would have to agree. I'll tell you in a second kind of what I've done. So one of the reasons why I love your content, one of the reasons, folks, that I love Chris's content is Chris gives a lot of value in his content. Him and I are very similar in that regard, in that there is this class if you want a more structured, instructor-led, on-site, someone to walk you through it, very structured way. But he also has this FreePBX playlist that I used. I mean, I stood up a FreePBX system from scratch. I knew nothing about it, and I learned so much through those courses. I can't thank you enough. I stood up, and it works great.
Good.
But I have a bunch of questions on VoIP for you. So
yeah, let's do it.
My dad's restaurant, we transitioned him over from landlines with AT&T and Comcast, etc., to a VoIP system that is managed by a company called OnSIP. It's pretty simple. I mean, we just got some Yealink phones, configured a URL on the back end of the phones, bada bing, bada boom, connected, dial tone, we're off to the races. Do you recommend these solutions to all types of industries and businesses. For example, we're a restaurant. Here's the challenge we've had.
Yeah.
Every time the internet went down, or every time there's even a degradation in quality of service of the internet, where you had to reboot that internet router, you have to reboot every single phone.
Right.
And
that's interesting, because that shouldn't be. The phones should re-register periodically regardless. But I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No. So this is one of the things that I'm curious about. So maybe they do register on some kind of a time interval, but if you're a restaurant and the phones are ringing,
got to get them back up. Sure.
And here's the other challenge with it. If nobody notices, because sometimes the router will be online, it's very, very slow. Like, it's almost not serving internet, but as far as the phone is concerned, there's still a heartbeat, so to speak.
Right.
How do you get around these? Like, is this recommended for restaurants, or do you have restaurant customers?
Certainly. Yeah. So everything, I mean, you think about it, right? It's voice over IP, right?
Yeah.
Your voice services over an IP network. Okay.
Right.
So if the IP network is not up to snuff, your voice services are going to suffer as a result.
Yep.
Right. So how do you mitigate that? You have to have solid internet. You have to have potentially, a really good router that can pass those pass the traffic without, getting bogged down. The problem is voice over IP. If you're surfing the web or you're watching Netflix, right? TCP/IP standard traffic, you're going to have error correction as part of that, right? If I go to Amazon.com and Amazon misses a packet when it's sending me the page that I'm looking for, it corrects and it resends that packet, right? You don't have that same opportunity with voice over IP because it's a real-time protocol.
Right.
So we get these kinds of questions often, like, there are people that don't have network drops somewhere, for instance, and they want to have a Wi-Fi phone. Like, I want a phone that just runs across my Wi-Fi because I've got this back room where, we don't have a network drop to plug in a phone. It's like, okay, I mean, there are Wi-Fi phones, but now your phone is subject to the quality of the connection that it is using. It's subject to the quality of that wireless, right? So, I mean, I don't know. Have you ever had blips with your wireless network?
All the time.
All the time, right? So that's the thing, is then people say, oh, this phone sucks. You know what I mean? Because it's not the phone. It's that you're putting it into an environment that is heavily dependent on the quality of the network that it's living on. And so, yeah, that's really the number one thing, is if the network is solid, your voice over IP experience is going to be ideal. If there are issues with the network, then that's where we run into those voice quality problems. NAT is an issue, especially something like a double NAT situation where you have a modem from the ISP that has its own LAN, and then you're feeding that into your own firewall, which then does network address translation again, and voice over IP has trouble with that. So it's really mostly comes down to the network. In fact, I tell people like 95+% of voice quality issues with voice over IP phones are network or firewall related. And that's 100% true.
Yeah. So for our deployment, I got an internet backup, a LTE internet backup from AT&T, just to mitigate outages, because we had an outage with AT&T that drove me insane. And then there was a couple of instances with the actual provider where it was an issue on their end that also just took a long time to fix. But so the deployments that you're doing mostly for customers, are they cloud-based or are they on premises still? Is it a good mixture? Which one do you recommend? Any pros and cons?
It depends, right? So it depends on the type of deployment that we're going into. If we are installing into a hospital or a school or some sort of municipality that is dependent on making sure that those phone lines are up all the time, then having an on-premises server works best, because you have those voice over IP options, but you can also pop a card in the server and plug in a fractional PRI or some POTS lines as backup, like in the instance of like a school, right?
Right.
If the internet goes out, that school should still have some mechanism by which they can call 911 and by which, parents can call in about their students or, their kids and that sort of thing. Whereas like for a restaurant, it might not be so important to have that level of redundancy on site. So we have a chain of restaurants down in Florida. Where are you located, by the way?
Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, so down in Florida, we have a chain of restaurants that we service that has a hosted phone system because they're a chain of restaurants. So they can have one phone server, and each of the restaurants has extensions connected to that phone server centrally. That way, if any one of the restaurants goes offline, that one restaurant's offline, but the rest of the restaurants are not affected. And in fact, they can pick up the slack if, this location over here you can't connect to. Well, we're going to send all the calls to this other, sort of relatively close restaurant, and they can at least answer those calls, right? Whereas if you had an on-premises server in that situation, if the internet goes down where that on-premises server is, you might potentially lose all of those restaurants. Right. So it really depends on the architecture and the business, how we structure it. And that's really like, we tell people like we are your partner in voice over IP because we sit down with our customers and we say, all right, let's look at what you've got and let's figure out the best scenario for your particular deployment. As opposed to a lot of companies, like Ring Central or even this, OnSIP, those types of companies, they don't have that level of service.
Yeah.
You're just buying what they offer and that's it, right? We are approaching it from more of a, hey, this is how we would do it if we were you, right? And sitting down with them and actually designing out the system start to finish, which also gives the customer the opportunity to potentially make best practice changes to the way that they're handling their calls to make things more efficient. As I said, like having other locations back up a location that might be down, things like that, that you really don't get that level of service when you just reach out and sign up with whomever, ABC phone vendor.
Right. And whether it's on premises and you're deploying hardware or obviously in the cloud, it's a different story, but you're still managing that hardware for them, correct?
Yes, exactly. Well, I should say it is, we are available to manage the hardware for them. Oftentimes, just like anything, like everything in IT is a learning curve, right? You might be a great IT guy for your organization, but you really just don't have a lot of experience in voice over IP.
Sure.
Right. So rather than go through that learning curve, you would hire someone like Crosstalk. We would come in, we'd work with you, we'd educate you on the system, we'd get it set up with a best practice installation and get it installed. And then as the IT guy, you might opt to then take over maintenance of that moving forward. And then we're your second string backup. If there's something that you run into that you can't figure out, we'll help you out at that point. So it really depends, again, organization to organization. Do they have on-site IT staff that's available for the daily moves, adds, and changes of the phone system, or do they want us to completely manage the phone system? We're fine either way.
Right. So shifting gears on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, you were telling me that there's some merch that's coming. You just finished a professional photography session that you were really excited about.
Yeah, which was super awkward. I think the pictures came out great, but it was super awkward. It's so funny because, like, as you are well aware, it takes a lot to turn a camera on yourself and start talking.
Yes, it does.
Right? Which is funny because then I go to this like photo shoot. We have this new merch. This is one of my new t-shirts that we just produced. Crosstalk Solutions, right? So I'm pretty excited to get some new t-shirts out on the website and stuff, but I had to go like take some professional pictures with the t-shirts. I don't want to just like, I don't know, like take pictures of myself somehow here in my studio. I wanted to like do something special. Like let's go out and actually do some cool photography, which I've got a guy here in town where I live, and he's a great photographer, and he has a full studio and he set it up, but it's so weird. It's so awkward. Just like stand there, put your hands in your pockets, put your weight on the left, leg, and all this sort of weird things. And like, smile, look that way, look that way. It's just like, oh, it's so weird. I don't know how people do it.
And some people, to your point, some people do this for a living. So
yeah. Like I said, it's hard enough. I don't know. For some reason though, when I'm sitting here alone in my office and I turn the camera on and I start talking, I don't have that same level of awkwardness because there's no one else here.
Right.
So I guess, I don't know. And it does take a long time though, especially I would say anyone that's looking to start out in YouTube, number one, just start doing it. Right. That's probably the best advice, is just start putting content out there. But you're not going to be great at first. Like my first videos are terrible. And one of the things that's really hard to condition yourself out of doing, I'm still working on it every day, is removing crutch words out of your speech, like
Yeah.
You know, like it's like saying, "Oh, Elias, I need to do this and I need to do that," right? So training yourself over time to speak without those crutch words is really, really difficult.
It's difficult. It is difficult. Speaking of, there's a really cool software by TechSmith, if you haven't seen it yet, it's very cool because what it allows you to do is export your video. And when you export the video, it will create essentially a script of your video.
Oh, okay.
And you can edit the video from the text script. So for example, you can search for ums. Yeah, you can search for ums and then just remove them, and it will remove them from the timeline and allow you to export it back to an MP4. For me, it's been super helpful because I do Pluralsight and Udemy type videos as well.
Right.
Sometimes you can't avoid the like no matter how much you try, how much you've tried, it's in there. And it's funny because you start to recognize the signature on the actual timeline of the and you can remove them that way. But I've noticed this software really helps because it really removes it in a clean way. Sometimes when I'm doing it, I cut too close.
Right.
But this software actually, they've really mastered the how to cleanly cut it out. So
is that Camtasia? I'm only familiar with Camtasia from TechSmith.
So I forgot the name of it. It's not Camtasia. It integrates with Camtasia. So if you're using Camtasia, you can export directly to it. It starts with an A. I'll send you a link to it after. But yeah, it's been a lifesaver for me. And it's funny when you were talking about getting used to talking to the camera. When you're doing YouTube, but also when you're doing training. So when you're doing YouTube, at least you're recording yourself. When you're doing training, like some of the things that I do, you're talking essentially into the void because there's a presentation. You're not even on screen.
Right.
And the funny part is you'll make a joke. So I've conditioned myself to just be me, right? So it's not scripted. It's not a machine. It's just me. And sometimes I'll make a joke because I'm hoping that whoever watches this at some point will laugh at this. And I can't tell you how many times, like 6 months later or a year later, somebody's watching the video and they will send me a private message laughing at the joke that I recorded a year ago.
Yeah, that's that delayed response.
Yeah, it's a delayed response. That's right. So we covered VoIP. You are doing a lot with. So is FreePBX still the software that is the only software that you're focusing on right now?
We have two types. So it's interesting because we're in the middle of a paradigm shift in voice over IP, right? A lot of companies still use the traditional desk phone, you know, with a server and a connection out to the rest of the world. But more and more often, we are seeing services such as like a cloud PBX service where you're basically just renting the phone and you're connecting it to a cloud PBX like OnSIP, I believe, is similar to that. Ring Central is another example. We have our own, cloud PBX service now as well. So there's the shift into that kind of service, but there's also the shift into companies that are solely relying on Zoom and Microsoft Teams for all of their communication, right? Those types of full, like, unified communication platforms that a lot of people are saying, we don't need the traditional phone system anymore. It depends on the type of business, because a lot of businesses still do need that. When you're calling in, hey, thanks for calling ABC company, press 1 for sales, press 2 for support, press 3 for billing, whatever, right? So there is still that need for the inbound auto attendant, but not every company needs that anymore. And some companies just are starting to shift to these types of other platforms. And so at the same time, I'm a big proponent of open source and, solutions that don't cost you an arm and a leg, especially in recurring fees. Which is why FreePBX is wonderful for that, because it's a software that you can download. They do have commercial modules that you can add on as packages, but the costs are fairly minimal compared to the overall cost of the deployment. But the open source PBX is stewarded by a company called Sangoma. Sangoma has gotten really big to the point where we're starting to see issues with QA stuff slipping through the cracks.
You mean for
updates, security problems, or they'll like push an update for a version that breaks other versions and things like that, you know, like just weird like QA issues. They're kind of like dropping the ball a little bit on it. So it's a little bit concerning in that you've got this really great open source platform that is starting to degrade at the same time that the paradigm shift is happening to other types of phone systems. So believe me, we're looking forward to like what's next, because we can't just continue to keep hammering that nail if the tools are changing.
So what, in your opinion, in a perfect world, in your perfect world, what would be next? Would it be a closed source version of FreePBX that folks like you or others can potentially bring to market? Is it a Sangoma split up? Like how would this get solved?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Ideally, what I would love to see is an open source platform that combines your unified communications, you know, Zoom type teleconferences with the traditional PBX functionality as like an open source package. And then, you know, maybe have options for licensing, you know, a per seat features for call centers or something, you know, like you gotta, the problem with open source platforms and open source products is you're giving it away for free for the most part, but you do have to find a way to monetize that, right? Sure. So do you monetize it
usually, right?
Yeah. Do you monetize it with add-on software or enhanced features that customers pay for? Do you monetize it with support services for that product? There's all sorts of different models, right? So it's really like what works and what's gonna take off, I guess.
Right.
And we don't have there's nothing on the horizon that I'm aware of.
So let's transition off of VoIP. I think we've talked a lot about VoIP. So what else is Crosstalk working on? Is there anything new? Any new offerings that you're working on, or are you just focused on VoIP and it's enough to keep you and the company busy? Like, what can you tell me?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because voice over IP is like kind of the least of what we do on YouTube, but it's the most of what we do as a business. So it's really a statistics game of I'm putting out computer networking videos or Ubiquity product reviews or some other company product reviews, right? And enough people watch those videos that say, hey, wait a minute, who's this Crosstalk company? Right. And then they come to the website and they're like, oh, they also do phone systems. Well, we kind of need a phone system.
Right.
You know, so out of all the people that watch a video for networking, computer networking, a smaller percentage of those will actually come to the website or come, you know, look at other videos. An even smaller percentage will see that we do voice over IP, and an even smaller percentage will actually buy a phone system from us, right? So it's a weird, like, kind of full numbers game. And I've been trying to switch more into the computer networking side of things as a business to do more of that business because we get a lot of computer networking leads.
Sure.
But there's, you know, from the business perspective, there's zero margins in computer networking hardware, right? So a Ubiquity product, for instance, I can't resell a Ubiquity product because the only avenue to get it, there's such high demand for these products. And
it's crazy.
Not just Ubiquity, but like there's such high demand for computer networking components in general. All of the companies seem to simultaneously be suffering from supply chain issues, chip shortages, et cetera, for the past, you know, 2 to 3 years now, with really no relief in sight. And so like these companies don't have demand problems. They have supply problems, right? They can't get enough of the stuff in stock. So none of those products are going to resellers who would be purchasing them at a discounted price in order to make a few bucks when they resell them.
Oh.
So yeah, that's just it. That's the weird thing is like, I would love to offer more computer networking services, but there's just such little margins in the hardware that it just comes down to the labor that we're charging. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's a lot of work to do that kind of stuff.
Definitely a lot of work.
So what I've been focusing on primarily now is trying to find the sort of larger projects that are very interesting on video. And I have been foregoing a lot of our labor costs if a company will allow me to come out and film what we did.
Interesting.
And sort of make a story out of, you know, here's how we did the design, here's how we installed it, and here is us testing it afterwards with, you know, nice drone shots if I can and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what I've been focusing on lately, is where are these really cool installs that I can showcase on the channel. And that is, we got a couple of really good ones coming up. So
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I miss those videos where you actually got in the car and went and bought stuff and came back and did it, whether it was around the house or, you know, some company that you're helping. Those were always awesome. But let me ask you this.
Yeah,
speaking of networking, I have a love-hate relationship with Ubiquity products. And I'm curious, are you the same way or am I crazy?
So you're not crazy. To me, though, and this is always interesting to people when they ask me about this, because we are a business that services other businesses. We don't service home users. Being that we are a business that services other businesses, Ubiquity makes some really cool like home network and prosumer firewall equipment, right? Yeah. The Dream Machine Pro, right? They've got these new Dreamwalls coming out that are super cool. They've got USG firewalls, all these sorts of things. Great for home users, not great for businesses. I've even done videos specifically on this topic, like why we don't use Unify or recommend Unify firewalls for businesses.
You prefer pfSense, right?
We love pfSense. Yeah, I like pfSense a lot. There's other brands that we work with as well, but pfSense is it does pretty much everything you'd want it to do, and it's an open source product, so we kind of like it because of that. But we get a lot of you know, home users and prosumers that are in the same boat that you are. They get frustrated with the equipment because there's a little thing that doesn't work right, or they, you know, there's a bug that they found, and there isn't a lot of that enterprise level of support that you would expect when you're installing into a business. So people are, for the most part, left on their own as far as support with Ubiquity, or they have to go to the forums or something like that. You're kind of on your own. And that's not a suitable answer for businesses. Now, as far as their switches and their access points and other products such as that, wonderful, right? Get your good solid firewall in place and then use everything else Ubiquity if you want.
Yeah.
Because all the other stuff works pretty great. But yeah, it's just, that's kind of where most of the frustration is in that this sort of internet facing portion of their products is there's just features that aren't quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree. I also feel like over the years, even their QA has suffered a little bit. I've been, for example, the viewport. I've got some Ubiquity cameras that I love. The problem right now is I can't find them. Like I can't buy them even if I want to. And what do you tell someone that really needs cameras? So we ended up with 2 camera systems, which is frustrating. But something like the viewport, I've had this issue with the viewport where it works great, and then all of a sudden, you know, 20, 30 minutes later, an hour later, sometimes 2 hours later, you start to see lag. It just lags until you reboot it. It's just so frustrating. I've had a ticket open with Ubiquity forever. So some of these things are becoming frustrating, but I'll be honest with you. Right now, my biggest frustration is I can't find some of the hardware. Like I've been trying to put a door access system in place, and these components will just become available at random times, but the light version of the door access that's been out of stock for at least 3 months. It's driving me nuts. Yeah. So the supply chain issue has been really frustrating.
Yeah. To the point where, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this because it almost sounds like you're setting me up for this question or this answer, I should say. You know, one of our side projects is UINotify.net. Are you aware of this?
No, please go ahead. Continue.
So, I had the same issues that you're describing, right? And so I have a developer that works for me, and like super bright kid. He, like anything I throw at him, he can handle. And so at one point I was like, how can I get notified when the products that I'm looking for go in stock? And he said, yeah, we could build you something like that. And then like, as I was thinking about it, I'm like, other people might want this too, right? So we built a full platform around notifying people when Ubiquity products come in stock, right? So UINotify.net, if you go, you can sign up. It's absolutely free. But when the free version, you get like the deluge of absolutely everything that comes in or out of stock.
Super cool.
Will be sent to your email. We also have a Twitter feed. We also have a Discord feed at Crosstalk's Discord channel. If you do the pro version, the paid version, it's $5 a month, but you can filter it down to just the products that you're looking for, and it comes as an SMS text message to your phone. So I, for one, know that Ubiquity restocks their store at 4:06 a.m. Pacific time every single day, right? Because I get dings on my phone. If there's a product that I'm looking for a project, I add it to my notification list. I get a text message at first thing in the morning, which, by the way, text messaging is expensive. That's why we have to charge for this service, right?
Yeah, then I
get a text message and it's like, hey, such and such 8-port switch just came in stock. And so then I have to like roll my butt out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, come over to my computer, and hopefully I can get the product that I need real quickly. So that's how we did it. And we turned that into a little bit of a side business that's actually, I mean, it's pretty lucrative, honestly. It's not going to make or break us, but it's a nice little paycheck every month for sure.
So you mentioned Unify Dream Machine Wall or Dreamwall or something like that?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
So they announced this product, and I have to be careful because on YouTube,
whatever's NDA, let me know.
Yeah, you're not supposed to talk about their early access stuff, but they did do an announcement video surrounding this one. So I can at least talk about whatever they showed in the announcement video. They have these 2 new products coming out, the Dreamwall and the Dreamwall Pro. And essentially what it is just a big, like, you know, yay big device that hangs on the wall, and it is your router and firewall and a PoE switch, and I think it has Protect cameras. The Pro version has a secondary box that's also a UPS that keeps the power going on the primary box. And they took the Dream Machine concept and changed the form factor so that it hangs on the wall almost like a piece of art, as opposed to being in a network rack. And there's a lot of discussion online whether or not that's going to be something that people even want, because it almost seems like if you were going to put up that dream wall, you'd have to do it on like new construction, right? Because like how many people are going to have a spot where they can put this on the wall, and that's where all their networking terminates, is right where you're putting this thing, you know? So it's kind of an interesting paradigm shift in the way that you think about a router and a firewall. But there's also like no one else doing this type of innovative stuff. You know,
it could be interesting for home builders. I mean, that's a challenge for all those that are building modern homes. This could be something that they could target them with, is, you know, put that into the architecture and make sure you deploy it and, you know, sell it. It's a value add for whoever's buying a new custom built home.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of an interesting product. I have one here. I have not taken it out of the box yet. It's been sitting like right over here on the side of my office for the past like 3 or 4 months. Just because since it's still early access, I can't do a video on it anyways. So I just haven't had time to pull it out of the box. But I'm pretty excited to get that thing set up and tested and get a video out on it.
Well, that's awesome. Chris, the conversation with you is always fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'd love to do this again soon. Yeah. Maybe, you know, we do this around Christmas. I know you do those videos on perfect gifts for Christmas. I love those videos. So maybe we could do something around that time, or maybe a little bit after in 23, and see what's coming out in 23 from Ubiquity, or maybe some of the VoIP stuff will have flushed out maybe a little bit more, and we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There's whenever I'm talking to an IT guy like myself who has the gift of gab, right? You never run out of things to talk about. You know, and that's the nice thing about just being able to turn a camera on and talk. You never run out of things to talk about. So
that's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon. Take care now.
Thank you.